Our next speaker is Dr. Jim Brydie. He's the Director of Upstream and Environment Team at Canmet Energy in Devon. His background includes applied geology and environmental geochemistry, and he has worked in academia, industry, provincial, and federal governments. Jim directs a team of 33 scientists and research technologists across a number of technical areas intended to reduce the environmental impacts of fossil fuel development on air, land, and water. His experience in GHG emissions reductions includes hand-on technical involvement in many of the Alberta-based carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects. He's made contributions to the North American CO2 Storage Atlas, the development of cap rock remediation methods for CO2 storage sites, and the laboratory testing and field-based validation of CO2 and methane measurement systems using controlled gas releases. Jim.
Good morning, everyone. It's been very interesting to see the presentation so far, and it's great. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I just wanted to quickly go over this. I guess is the last presentation of the morning, and Canmet Energy Devon, we're involved in the initial kind of discussions around CanERIC, but currently we don't have any active participants and SMEs. But so I wanted just to give you kind of an overview of what happens Devon, what the research capabilities that we do have in support of CanERIC, and so we're very happy to be involved in this this network. So for those of you who, I mean, many people have been to Devon and Canmet Energy, but if you haven't, we're a federal government of Canada research facility located southeast of Edmonton. We share that facility with Initech Alberta, who is another CanERIC participant, and so we have close geographic ties there. We have 100 research scientists and technologists, a combination of engineers, chemists, a wide range of application scientists and technologists, support technologists, hands-on, some are field-based. We have a broader NRCan network as well. So that's something that we can certainly offer in terms of places like Canmet, Ottawa, and I'll go over some of the details, but they're involved heavily in some of the larger scale CCUS projects. Research focus really for NRCan and for Devon is to support the sustainable development of natural resources through science and technology. So we're kind of constantly involved in developing technologies and approaches, developing methods, analyses from lab base, and then testing at industrial sites and at pilot scale. There are two main research teams, upstream and environment and downstream and renewables. Upstream and environment is my team, 33 people in that team, and downstream and renewables is Dr. Jinwen Chen. Participation in the CanERIC initiative. So we have a combination. Initially, our application was around solvent tanks, VOC emission testing and standoff measurements, and then analytical and testing support because we have analytical facilities on site. So far, we've been involved in the coordination and collaboration discussions with other Canmet members, most recently Initech, and review and approval of the first round of funding applications. And so that's been a really valuable process so far, just to see what kind of activities and what level of detail those have and how close some of those technologies are to commercialization. As I said, just kind of just a summary of the facility, where we are, two main research teams, and then participation in CanERIC. But we are very happy to be part of the network, as I mentioned, and available to support researchers, SMEs, links with academic organizations and industries. So, so we're pretty active in this area. Next slide, please. So in terms of the Devon research team focus areas, here you see two, well, you see the whole, I guess, network, the value stream. Predominantly Devon focused on oil sands and oil and gas. You see on the left-hand side of the screen, everything from surface mining all the way through to processing, froth treatment for bitumen recovery, solvent treatment and pipelining, all the way to upgrading and refining, biomass, and then end products. And of course, at the top middle, you see the in situ and SAGD components. So in terms of the two different research teams, upstream and environment expertise really is enclosed in that green area, and then downstream and renewables in the red. And you see across the bottom, many of these activities, of course, some are GHG intensive, some have GHG components, and some of the research projects that we have and that we can help with are in those areas. Next slide, please. In terms of the general research themes within upstream and environment, so we really split these into kind of 6 main areas. So extractive technologies, which includes surface mining, ore and froth treatment, non-aqueous extraction, those kinds of technologies. All of those designed to be more efficient, to produce less GHGs, and also impacts on reduction of water. In situ, SAGD, solvents, and the use of solvent foams. Tailings research, dewatering through geochemical methods, tailings ponds, so looking at OSPW, and also tailings ponds from the point of view of GHG emissions. So applied geoscience really covers geochemistry, so noble gases, contaminant transport. One of the most, I guess the project that comes to mind is the Brooks site, and so looking at migration of injected CO2 in the near subsurface. Resource development, also interested in orphan wells, fracking and tailings. Oil spill science, so really start to finish from oil spill science, looking at transport, and then looking at accidental spills of dilbit, conventional crude onto and into aqueous environments. Spill response supports the development of things like solidifiers and dispersants and testing those. And then fate and effects, what are the long-term impacts, toxicology, long-term behavior of oils in the environment. Emerging areas is kind of a catch-all for several energy storage projects, renewable energy storage, critical minerals. So we're working with a company called Summit Nanotech to look at lithium extraction from brines through membrane techniques, and carbon capture utilization. So they're trying to develop a Devon carbon conversion center. So that's an initiative in collaboration with Initech Alberta and Alberta Innovates. And then modeling and simulation, physical process simulations for multi-phase flow, and machine learning and artificial intelligence. So multiple processes there. And just an example of some of our collaborators in these areas. Next slide, please. Thank you. So emission-related activities. So as I said, it's Devon, but also across the NRCan network, and so Canmet Ottawa involved as well. So for CCUS, I mentioned noble gases to monitor subsurface gas migration, really in that quantification and monitoring space. Canmet Ottawa, large-scale CCUS project participation. And so Dave Risk mentioned many of the large ones, Quest and Weyburn and so on. Tailings ponds emissions, so in situ reduction of GHG emissions from tailings ponds. This is really about microbial methods to reduce emissions from the solvents that end up in the tailings ponds from part of the froth treatment process. GHG emissions quantification, so really this is Canmet Energy Ottawa. Equipment testing, field data acquisition, and emissions inventory. So Mike Lair is the key scientist there. Next slide, please. And just in terms of facilities that we have to offer, and so facilities and expertise. So we do have Class 1, Dev 1 piloting spaces. We have pentane, solvent, bitumen tanks for instrumentation, so that there's a tank farm. So we could use those for releases and fugitive emissions testing. We do have some flare stacks, but really that would be covered by Carlton and others. But we do have flare stacks for instrument testing and analytical laboratories and lab space. So that's probably the biggest offering that we have. Expertise, so emissions quantification, I mentioned CCUS experience, and involvement, fundamental research to applied science, and bench scale to pilot scale testing. So really that's kind of, we're happy to open those facilities and support through expertise anyone who wants to use that space, and we're happy to collaborate. Next slide, please. And that's it, and just some contact information for the group, and thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'll now open the floor to questions. I have one about your tank releases. You can release methane from a tank in a known quantity.
So the initial intention around the CanERIC ask was to add mass flow controllers and to gauge the releases from vents from those tanks. Those weren't put in place, but if there was sufficient interest, we could add that. And so the intention was to really allow people to come look at standoff measurements, maybe sort of open path type measurements, dial, those kinds of instruments. And other point sensors. So,
Jim, this is Jason from the University of Alberta. You mentioned the flare stacks. Are you just talking about the Carleton facility, or do you have something else as well?
They're just small flare stacks, and they relate to the pilot plants that we have on site. And so as we're going through and we're processing and making froth and extracting the bitumen, is the byproduct of those. So currently, I guess they're gauged for operational monitoring, but Carleton has a much more sophisticated system.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.